Is mentioned there are growing pains. We're growing as an island. The past 20 years we have grown in every single situation, business, tourism. But today I'll be speaking a bit about tourism as well because it's important. Are we overreacting?
It's very interesting to hear certain comments, what I refer to as the absolutes. There's an issue, they bring everything down. We have to understand, I mean, I've seen the whole transformation of the last 40 years in tourism, but particularly the last 10 years. We grew at a very fast rate in a very short time, mainly and mostly a bit before COVID, and after COVID even more. Because what happened till COVID, we were seeing a lot of records in figures, but after that, we were so scared that the industry wouldn't pick up again, that it was all systems go. Government pushing from a marketing point of view, keeping all the airlines cozy so that the airlines won't leave us, because obviously we depend on our linkage. If we don't have any airlines, there's no tourism. It's all about sea and air in Malta. And that's how our tourism grew, with different airlines coming to the island. So everyone, even the private sector, was pushing. And the moment we opened the floodgates, our airport, from literally zero tourism, everything...
What is zero?
Zero.
Wow.
Literally. Imagine. And the moment we opened our airports, we were all like fingers crossed. We didn't know what was going to happen, imagine. And the graph just moved straight up, steadily, as if we were never closed. Now, the reality is, it wasn't only because we prepared ourselves, but also because there was a very big demand. People were so frustrated. In fact, tourism grew everywhere. But let me tell you what happened. The last years, a lot of businesses became very cash-rich with all the business that was going on. And consumers' confidence and business confidence grew so big that everyone was investing. I know somebody who had 6 establishments, 6 restaurants. Today, this person has about 54. Imagine. Somebody who had 1 hotel ended up with about 3 or 4. Somebody who had 2 apartments ended up with 20 apartments. So this is what business confidence brings. But the way I see it is, nobody was seeing things from a high development framework on top. Everyone was tweaking their little bit. And everyone was investing like there's no tomorrow. Now we're at a situation where we need to manage this growth. And we need to know exactly from the supply side. And this was done through a document I participated and all the stakeholders did. The Vision 50, Vision 30, Vision 50, which is all about taking stock of what we have, what we need to improve, to now go, we can be picky and choosy to go more for what we refer to as a higher value chain. In other words, instead of going for volume, but going more for quality, for spend. But to do that, you obviously need to have a product as well. Now, what frustrates me is that we have a part of the island going in the right direction, where we have better investments. I'll give you an example. When we talk about restaurants, now we have over 40 Michelin star restaurants. I mean, this was a dream. I come from a generation when the best chefs you had were the chefs that used to work for the British Army or Navy. Can you imagine in those days? We used to say, he's got a good chef. He used to cook in the army. Now it depends in the army. If you're cooking for soldiers, it's one thing. And if you're cooking for the admirals and, the higher officials, it's another thing. But today, the restaurants we have are unbelievable. But at the same time, same when it comes to 5-star hotels, we're going to have the first, which is going to be built 6-star as well now, hotel. You see, so you have a lot of the old stock being replaced. But you also have what I refer to as the copycat syndrome. In other words, some are replicating what is actually redundant or going to be redundant. So we're going to go into an interesting phase now where we have an oversupply. Let me explain in a broader way. Years back, every time a hotel opened or more outlets opened, there's a committee, at Malta Tourism Authority, which is referred to as the Route Development Committee. And what they do is, every time a hotel used to open and the supply side increased, they used to say, okay, we need to get another 100,000 tourists. And they would negotiate with airlines and bring more tourists. But now we're at a stage when we're carrying 4.3 million, and this year it seems we're going to close at 4.5 million tourists. Imagine that we cannot carry any more tourists in volume, so the beds cannot dictate the amount of tourists that we need, because if you have more beds than the island can carry tourists, this means that you have to start containing. Now I know what's going to happen, and it's already happening. The better establishments that are more efficient, better located, that have good pricing as well, not necessarily pricing, because tourists don't mind paying for a higher product, but pricing is important in the middle sector as well. They are already taking over the market and slowly but surely eliminating the older type of establishments. So we're moving into, I would say, a kind of an economic war the next few years. This is what really scares me. Malta is the size what it is. It's not Australia. And we know that we have certain pockets that are very, very congested. Now we are at the most important time, and we're not late. We're not late at all. Where we need to manage our growth. And this is all about what we read about nurturing more open spaces, okay, controlling certain building in certain areas. I mean, I remember there was an editorial in a Maltese paper, English written, where I referred to Parcherville as our mini Manhattan, and the editorial ridiculed it, and all these usual, keyboard warriors were attacking. What's he talking about, mini Manhattan, mini this and that? The reality is, if you look at St. Julian's, Parcherville in particular, that's what it's being developed in. Today we have clubs that are penthouse clubs right on top. And a lot of activity and high value added of business is created there. A lot of money is spent in these places. As I said, you have a complete mix, you see? So when you look at the different type of investments, it's important that now we invest widely. And as I said, we are very, very cash rich. To an extent, when I mentioned that our economy grew from 7 billion to 25 billion, our household savings, in other words, money in all the banks by Maltese, is about 15.9 billion. Now that's a lot of money. And that is not the business sector. It's not business activity. It's money. Anyone from a pensioner to a student who might have 500 euros in the bank or 100 to somebody who has a few million. Now, that shows you the amount of wealth that was generated within the last years and are there tidily saved in a bank, which shows you why people are ready to invest. Let me explain to you something else. The distribution of wealth, because we talk a lot about people that make a lot of money, that are big and made it big. I know a lot of them, I saw them grow within the last 40 years, who started from a real humble business, from one establishment to God knows what. Some of them, I mean, literally plowing their fields. Today, they have a whole manufacturing
empire.
Unbelievable, I mean, all sorts of businesses, when I look at them, and their children have taken over now, many of them, I mean, they didn't even know how to write their name. Literally, they were illiterates, but they had a good business acumen, what I like to refer to as emotional intelligence. Now their children are all with PhDs, all of them very qualified, and they're taking over the business. So when you look at all this, and when I said, I'll go back to your original question, like they're investing like there's no tomorrow, because business brings business. And this is happening, but we need to manage our growth, very, very important. And we need to manage also our investments, where we are investing. Let me give you an example, what I mean when I say managing our growth. We now have 130,000 foreigners working in Malta. this is another misconception. It was used politically, and I'm a bit allergic to these populistic, what I punchlines, okay, that then are caught up by the same echo chamber, and they're repeated and repeated. One of them is, because the government got all these foreigners. Now, I'm not being defensive for government. I'm being defensive, if anything, for the business sector, okay? Government did not bring any foreigners. It was the business sector that asked government, and they still do, to give permits to bring foreigners to work in Malta, because business confidence, as I said, is all there, is all very prosperous. So if you open anything, whether it's a supermarket, whether it's a boutique, whether if you have an accountancy firm, whether it's a hotel, you need staff. Now, with all the Maltese on unemployment, obviously you're going to go to government and tell government to give you permits to employ foreigners. So it's not true, government got all these foreigners. It's not true at all. We did, if anything, the business sector.
We accepted that reality.
Is a response. It is. Now, I was referring to what we could do to manage the amount of foreigners, because the reality is, as I said, the island, the size is what it is. So there are other things we can do to be more efficient. For example, digitalization. In the last budget, we lobbied a lot, and here I'll put on my hat. I sit on a lot of boards and committee. I'm all over the place, literally. And at the Malta Council for Economic Development, we lobbied a lot for digitalization, for grants and help and tax credits by government for digitalization, because if we digitalize our operations, anything from a hotel, any business, the amount of staff that you won't need and will be replaced with digitalized systems is enormous. I mean, it's very easy to say that a medium-sized hotel could do away with about 6 less employees. Imagine that amount in a lot of businesses, anything, back offices, because...
But don't forget, it's important that it's not only foreigners who lose their job as well, if that's the case. Because I had literally our last episode, we spoke about AI and how it's going to take over many jobs.
Yes.
And we spoke about how the Uber CEO, he mentioned that 9 million Uber drivers will lose their job in the next, I think, 5 or 10 years. I can't remember well. 9 million Uber drivers, just from Uber. Can you imagine if we digitalize a whole economy, what will happen to Malta? Okay, we have our problems, we have what to fix, but we also have to see, okay, digitalization, it's going to improve, it's going to help. It helps me, and I'm a small business. But at the same time, if we're going to digitalize businesses, you're going to chop off a lot of employment. And that doesn't only dedicate the foreign aspect, the foreigners aspect, it also dedicates the national aspect of us. So it does help in a way, but it's also harming us in a way as well.
I can't say how broad AI is going to affect, and I don't think anybody really knows. But if you look back history, there's always been other jobs that took over jobs that didn't remain popular anymore. I mean, a story I remember when I was young, telling me in the days when they used to ride horses, and all those handcrafted saddles and all the leather stuff you needed for a horse. And they all said, with cars, they're going to be out of business. The reality isn't. They had more business because they ended up doing all the leather for the cars in those days, which were mainly handmade, etc. You see? So there's always displacement. It will go somewhere else.
How crowded is Malta? And it's a question I don't think there's a strict answer to, but I'd like to hear your opinion, because our population in 2023 was up by 31% since the 2000s, early 2000s. And now the new number just came out, which is 588,000.
That's the last figure I heard.
It sounds, I believe, not too good to be true. But do you honestly believe that number?
Well, you have an amount of undeclared people, because a lot of them are being deported when they're caught. But I don't have reason to believe that does much more. It feels much more because that is the local population, local and foreigners as well. But it does not include the amount of tourists that you have here every day
Roaming around the streets.
roaming around the streets,
I
especially.
think we forget that, huh?
We forget that completely.
I don't think we calculate it.
Let me tell you to what extent, because this was mind-blowing, especially, again, someone like me, because of age, can compare all the time the past and can see the whole picture where we are today. I mean, this year only, January, we saw more tourists than we saw in August of 2012. Can you imagine August, the peak month, in January? January, our hotels way back used to close. In winter, they used to close, or they used to keep their staff literally to do all the maintenance, plumbing and painting and God knows
Waiter
what.
used to go and paint the walls.
Exactly. Today, there's no way they're going to do that. It's already very difficult to find a waiter to work. So imagine. Now, I've seen all this happen. I mean, I remember the days when the postman and the nurse, literally, I'm going back at least about 30 years, even more, used to come and beg me for a part-time job to come and work at the weekend, to top up their salary, to work as a waiter or a kitchen hand, everything, even as a cleaner, whatever. You know, from the postman to your nurse to your I don't know what. Imagine, today, it's very, very difficult to find, so to say, the lower category of work. Now, this is all an improvement, obviously, you know, and a lot of people say this is another, the usual, what you see on Facebook. Oh, because they don't pay, because they don't pay. They don't pay. I guarantee you, first of all, today there are a lot of regulations. And obviously, a job is paid for what it is. You're not going to get a waiter being paid as much as a manager, but a lot of the jobs that were done by waiters today are working in supermarkets, are working as drivers. You see, they've moved up the chain, and they're being paid more. But again, the shortages are everywhere. If you look at the whole workforce, literally, the shortages are everywhere, from accountants, laborers, everything, plasterers, plumbers, electricians. It's not only in tourism, it's everywhere, because the economy is vibrant, you know, in every aspect. But again, going back, regarding all these amount of figures and population, I believe that if we tweak slowly but surely, and this is part of managing our growth, we'll manage to contain the amount of foreigners that come to Malta. We already are containing it to a certain extent, but we have a lot more to do. So that will solve one problem slowly, and we can become more efficient when it comes to also our well-being index. Because there's no doubt about it, over-tourism has changed the whole lifestyle in Malta. Now, when we talk about over-tourism, what is under-tourism, I will ask, because it's very easy to say over-tourism. If we're going to talk about under-tourism, what are we saying? Are we going to retrench the amount of tourists, and then we're going to have a lot of hotels closing and unemployment and God knows what, and the economy is going to contract? Or are we going to manage what we have in a more efficient way, having a better transport system, having a better managed, distributed occupancy rate of tourists that is already happening? Before, all the tourists, as I was saying, when hotels used to close in winter, because tourists used to come only in the 3 months of summer, now they come all the year round. So that's already an improvement. A lot of the dead months we had are all working beautifully. And ironically, a lot of the highest type of tourists comes in winter for conferences. I mean, it's fair to say, there's a lot say, oh, all their spending is what, 150 euros. These youths, they come for 3 days. Yes, there could be some youths that come and spend 150 euros in the peak of summer. As I said, the lower denominator, and hopefully that will eliminate slowly. But there are others. I mean, these conferences, very easy. They leave anything between 3 to 4 and 5,000 per head when a conference happens. Doesn't mean they're spending them on champagne and food, but the whole cost with all their lodgings and all the whole setup of the conference. I mean, just like parties, there are parties and there are parties. I know parties in 4 days that left something like 12 million without causing any problem. And they're all a younger generation. In other words, we're talking about 25-year-olds, not the 50-year-old market, 25 to 35-year-olds. This generation has created a lot of wealthy people that it took a whole lifetime for people from my generation, the tech industry. I mean, I know and I've met so many in iGaming and the tech industry that come here for conferences. They're all already, I mean, you talk to them, I mean, they have like 10 million in cash under their head besides investments, and they're really young. You know, I mean, in my generation, I'm telling you, most people don't see that amount of money unless they're in business, and some of them had a head start because their parents were in business and they inherited a business. Others started from scratch as well. And others, you know, never made it. They remained in the employment road. Many of them didn't have an entrepreneurial character because it takes a lot. You know, there are other people. My father was a civil servant. When I told him I'm going in business, he thought I was crazy. He was the sort of person who believed in working with the government, have a steady job. At the end of the day, you know, you go home, enjoy your family, next day you go to work, and that's it. When you're in business, literally you're working 7 days a week, 24 hours, and many a time you have to feed your staff, cover all your expenses, and then if there's anything left, that's when you get paid. I know I've been through it. I've seen the highs and lows of business. You know, I've seen you make money, then you lose it, then you're a bit over-ambitious, you know, and you try. I'm one of those that was over-ambitious in the end, you know, and in the end it didn't work out because I had expanded too much the size of the business at the time, and I lost my position in the market. So, you know, it's not always a success story. I keep repeating this all the time. Some people are very romantic about it, and they think, you know, they see business people driving a nice car or living in a luxurious apartment, and they think it's all about that. It isn't, and especially in Europe, not in America. In Europe, if you don't make it, the system doesn't help you to recover.
How am I going to buy my first property? Keeps me thinking, and I did a bit of research about it. In the beginning of the 2000s, a home costs, listen properly, 7 years of salary. Okay? Today, it's 14 years, double. So in 20 years. So people calculated you can't buy your first property till you're 30 right now, as it is right now. People don't have a salary of 14 years in their bank. So they can't save everything. They have car bills, utilities, and all these things. So let's say they have the down payment. Go to the bank, see if they accept the bank. So this is a very, very big problem as well with the grey listing and the problems we have with the bank. It's a whole mess. So only 1 in 3 manage, the statistic is. Do you believe this problem considers a functional country?
The way I see it is, this is a part of the demand that you have for property that is being used for commercial purposes.
But there's so much flats and so much apartments.
Yes, but that is why the price went up in many, many ways and made it difficult. Property has gone up because there's the demand. That's the reason. Even the scarcity of land has increased prices as well. Now, you said 1 in 3, the statistic.
1 in 3.
1 in 3. There are others.
Excuse me, deposit.
Yeah.
Just deposit. So not actually buy, deposit.
Deposit.
I forgot to mention that part. It's a very
yes.
important part.
There are certain schemes, but are they enough? In certain aspects, for certain people, they aren't, no. But then there are others as well that are making good money and that can afford it. I mean, as I said, the distribution of wealth is what it is. At the end of the day, it's how capable. We're not born equal. A lot of people think that we're born equal or somebody owes somebody else a living. It's not the case. Nobody said that life is just. I can say I've seen life is so unjust. You know, certain people study, they do everything. They try everything in a business and they don't succeed. Then I've seen some people that do everything wrong and they've succeeded as well. And then there are others who get results because obviously they've done things right as well. And then there are others who are born more intelligent and manage to study, get a better job, earn a good wage, you see. So you have a bit of a mixed situation as well.
The point is that let's say you can't manage, or you're trying to buy your first property at 30 years old. I'm going to give you a bit of an ideal world of what's happening right now. So you're 30 years old, you're living with your mom and dad. Obviously, we're going to live in the street. We're going to rent. If you're living with your parents, you're going to delay kids. You're going to delay family automatically. And potentially leave the country because there is somewhere else that is more affordable for you and your family to build a family, etc. Which I think is a very big problem, especially leaving the country. It's a very big problem. We're getting replaced and it's not beneficial. So if there's someone sitting down here in front of you right now, and he's 30, let's say I'm 30, and I'm in this situation, I'm living with my parents, I don't have money for the deposit, I can't build a family because I don't have that money. Don't tell me money management, because sometimes there are a bit of problems like that. Money management, I get it, I understand it. But for someone who's actually trying, what would you tell me right now?
No, I can understand that there are situations where it's difficult that way. But at the end of the day, there's only one answer to this. The market isn't going to, nobody's going to
Reset.
say. Totally. You know what I mean? Forget it.
It's impossible.
Or somebody's going to say, oh, let me sell this apartment for 100,000 less to help this person. It doesn't work that. Unfortunately, the reality, the world is a rat race. There's no doubt about it. It's a harsh word, but it is. There's no doubt. It's complete. It's a complete struggling all the time. You just have to persevere even further, like anything else. Now, some people make it. They manage with a lot of sacrifices, with the right self-management, as you said. And then there are others. They're so lucky, and they make it so easy. They make it sound so easy, and it is easy for them because they were lucky. Lucky in many ways. Some had their parents that helped them. Others were lucky. They struck one good deal, and then they managed to accumulate from there. Then there are others who get caught in what I refer to as the dependency syndrome. In other words, they have a job. The job is an average job. That average job only keeps them
Average
in survival gear. In other words, they might put away a bit of money, but never enough, or it's going to take a long time to get this famous deposit, But these are facts of life, you know what I mean? I mean, again, there are schemes where government has helped. Has government helped enough? Can government help everyone? Slowly but surely, the more the country gains wealth, I feel government can come in.